And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome from St. Louis, Missouri, and the home of the Missouri Institute of Mental Health. My name's Tom Pansella with MIMH. We're glad that you took the time to join us this afternoon. I'll introduce your speakers to you in just a second here. But if you're joining us for the first time, we'd like to welcome you from wherever you are to this presentation. I think you're in for a real treat this afternoon. If you're interested in purchasing CEUs for today's program, there's a link for that underneath the video window. CEUs are only $10 a person, and you're welcome to purchase those or not as you see fit, but that link is under the video window, and we'll also email that to you after the program, probably first thing tomorrow morning. Also, there's a link to the presenter's slides as a PDF file. That's available to you if you'd like to download that and have it available, as well as another flyer that they provided for us, and they'll describe that to us as we go along here as well. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce, I did forget one thing to tell you. See, I thought I was going to introduce you right away. If you have any questions or comments at any point during the presentation, there's a chat window right underneath the video window. Take advantage of that. You'll see there's already been a conversation going on in there regarding CEUs, but feel free to use that area to submit questions or other feedback, and we'll ask the questions for you on your behalf. So, Justin Eidelberg. He's a mental health consumer and advocate for individuals with mental illness. Justin's a consultant for developing ways to help consumers advocate for themselves and ways to improve their services as he is a member of the Independent Center of St. Louis. He's also a member of the Missouri Department of Mental Health's Office of Transformation Consumer Conference Planning Committee, the International Center for Clubhouse Development Advisory Board, and he developed the concept of We Are More Than You Think, which is a forum to begin engaging mental health consumers, concerned friends and family members, and mental health professionals in a dialogue about ending the stigma of mental illness in the African American community. There's going to be a program related to that coming up at the end of July, and so we encourage you to join us for that one as well. Brian Evans is the Director of Suicide Prevention Education Programs for Mental Health America of Eastern Missouri. He also oversees mental health consumer peer education and support programs for MHA. Brian has more than 15 years' experience coordinating human and social services for children, youth, and families in urban communities and schools. He is an experienced facilitator, trainer on suicide, depression, and mental illness stigma. His work is specifically focused on the African American community and other marginalized communities. And Justin, Brian, thanks guys for being here again.
Thank you. Good afternoon to each and every one of you. It's a pleasure to present to you today, and I hope that you gain some information that will be helpful for you. I'm excited about this particular presentation about empowering individuals with mental health challenges to achieve personal goals. And what we're going to be talking about is how to build a team around that person that supports them in their efforts and their wanting to achieve personal goals. For today, it's important for our discussion. I realize that many of us in the audience are mental health professionals or human service professionals and work in a variety of different areas. But we also are glad to have joining with us family members and caregivers of persons with mental illness and persons who experience mental health challenges. I've been fortunate enough to work with Justin on several events here recently in the past year, and we began to have a conversation and a dialogue about what it means to support that person when they have received a mental illness diagnosis or when they are experiencing a mental health challenge, and how as caregivers we can support that individual. It's important for us as professionals in the field to educate and to bring awareness to stigma and how it prevents and how sometimes creates barriers for individuals in terms of seeking treatment. So today we're going to move right into our discussion, and I'm just going to give you a brief introduction of why this particular topic of empowering individuals is so important, and then a term that Justin has created, a pyramid of success, helping an individual start to gain momentum and start to gain if you will, start to gain those steps and take those first initial steps after diagnosis or even along the road to recovery toward achieving their personal goals. And then talking about those challenges and opportunities for success. Approximately 54 million people at any given time in a year will experience a mental health challenge. That's about 1 in 5 adults, and adults being anyone over the age of 18. Only about 15% of those persons who will experience a crisis in their life will actually seek mental health support or mental health treatment. When you think about that, that's a staggering number. Only out of the 54 million, only 8 million people will actually seek out assistance. Stigma, which is one of the greatest prohibitors, if you will, of someone, or barriers for someone seeking assistance. Those are those negative beliefs, attitudes, and also the discriminatory beliefs that people carry, or behaviors that they invoke on others. Or one of the biggest barriers for someone seeking out treatment. The person who is experiencing a challenge oftentimes will isolate themselves. The person who is experiencing that may feel because shame, or may feel discouraged about how others will feel or experience that with them, their family members. So oftentimes people will not seek out help or assistance. There are a range of emotions that can occur when someone is experiencing a challenge. One of the things might be the first, in terms of being diagnosed with a mental health disorder or behavioral health disorder, might be the terms of just being able to name it. That the fact that the problem has a name that is associated with what they're going through. So that might bring some relief. But in addition to that, there also might be other feelings of fear, shame, guilt. How will others, perceive me? Why did this have to happen to me? Someone I once worked with felt a lot of shame and guilt, and felt that maybe perhaps in their life they had did something personally wrong, or parents even have felt blamed for their relatives or their child's illness, or somehow this is my fault, rather than being a simple disorder that has occurred. How will this affect my life? As young people, oftentimes in their college years, or even persons working in the workforce experience a challenge, will I be able to go back to work? Will I be able to return to school? Can I actually go away to school and continue my education? Will I be able to get my children back? These are common questions when illness has taken over someone's life for their brief time, right at the initial part of their diagnosis. And what will people think of me? If you can think about the fact, if you're in a work environment and experiencing that, what will people feel about me if I disclose that I have this illness? What will they think if they find out that I have to take medication for an illness? What will they think if they know that I'm going to see a psychiatrist or a counselor or any mental health professional? Again, stigma has a lot to do with how we feel about ourselves as consumers, as well as how others view us. Living with a behavioral health disorder, can be challenging to the individual. It also can be challenging to the family members or caregivers. One of the challenges is, again, in terms of how do I help that loved one? How can I support that person? Many persons with disorders are successful in their life simply because they've had good treatment and they are actively involved. A combination of therapy and medication has been one of the key successes to people regaining some normalcy in life. In many cases, people are able to move on after their diagnosis and regain the normalcy of their life, able to go on and achieve greater things. Loved ones are what I like to term as teammates. If you can imagine it, on a team, you have all the members of the team, and there's a captain who basically is giving the directions on the field, if you will. I think the individual is our captain and helping us to navigate through our game of life and through their road of life towards recovery. And individuals need to determine who their teammates are. And along that recovery, in terms of their life, there are going to be many challenges. There are going to be many goals and accomplishments that they want to achieve. One task might be, after a diagnosis, is just simply being involved in treatment. Another might be in terms of getting back into the socialization of life, or just starting to rebuild their life. So these are different goals that someone might experience at the very beginning of after their diagnosis. Then some in terms of returning to school or returning to work, returning to being healthy, going on to achieve greater things. So it's important for us as teammates to help the person determine what is most important for them to obtain a successful and meaningful life. I like to think there are about 3 ways, or here are 3 ways that a person can basically start to regain their life, and ways that we can help empower them. 1, help a person identify goals that he or she wants to achieve. What's meaningful to them? Oftentimes, family members and caregivers, and even those of us who are clinicians, we want to project onto that individual our wishes, our goals, our dreams, without asking them what's important. Sometimes they can be too lofty. Sometimes they can be in terms of small and minute in comparison to where that person wants to go with their life. So it's important to ask them what's important to them. Help them become aware of what steps to take and the fact that there are available resources. I like to think of it in this terms. In every part of our life, we do have options. And it's important to start to realize that there are resources out there and we can take advantage of them. And then also helping him or her become self-sufficient in their life. Now, of course, individuals along the continuum of mental health experience different challenges. So for the person who may be in an inpatient program or hospitalized, it may be something as small as starting to regain their life, starting to take their medication, starting to being active in their treatment. Again, someone who's in a day treatment program, it might be steadily regaining a part of their life where they're actively involved in their community. And along that continuum of care that we want and we express so much in mental health, we want to have those supports outside to help us in terms of family members and other caregivers. It's what I believe that Justin calls a pyramid of success, and I'm going to let him start from here.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the pyramid of success. The pyramid of success is here to maybe help you all possibly give you a guide or a great foundation to help to be able to help enrich some of the people that you may come in contact with working with, and also maybe your family and loved ones or other co-workers. As you see here, we have 4 resources. I would say 4-step key points that we need to hit on, which is supports, resources, personal strengths, and assets. And here, what do you come to find out? What is a person's personal goals? What is a priority for that person? Me, for instance, my priority would be to stay med compliant. Second, to find maybe a housing option, and also possibly try to get myself back into the workforce or maybe even school. Second, where do you see yourself going in the future? Well, my future goals may be to open my own business. Second, to go back to school and get my BA or maybe my master's. Everyone's situation is a little bit different. And with that being said, you have to take that into consideration of what the person you're working with wants, not what the mom and dad wants, not what the doctor wants, but what do I see myself doing in the future. If I may pass it along to Brian.
One of the things that's important is to find out what that person deems as being important in their life. Oftentimes, the diagnosis or actually just seeking out treatment can be so devastating to someone's self-esteem and their concept of self. But what we want to ask is, before your diagnosis, what were your goals? What were the things that you wanted to accomplish? Oftentimes, this helps people to see themselves in the future because these are things that they feel were important to them. And so to find out and ask them, do you still want to achieve those goals? Do you still want to return back to school? A person that I worked with in asking this very question, he thought because he became ill in school that he could not return to school. It was his first episode, and it was devastating to him emotionally. Psychologically, he had his self-esteem was pretty much shattered at that point. And as we begin to talk and dialogue about what his goals were, what he wanted to become while he was in school, and then seeing that that was actually a very real possibility for his life, helped him to say to himself as well as to his family members that returning to school was a real option for him. Another thing to ask is, in terms of after diagnosis, What would you like to accomplish in your life? I'm fortunate enough to work with two individuals at Mental Health America who are peer educators and facilitators of support groups. These persons that I work with are my colleagues, and what I've learned about them was after receiving their diagnosis, they experience a number of different challenges and a number of different challenges in regards to how family members perceive them, how their co-workers and colleagues perceive them. But it made them say not only did they want to, in terms, become instrumental in their own careers, but part of their career they wanted to give back and to educate other persons, other consumers about mental illness. So I'm glad that on one of the slides that you have that you can access is our Bridges program, which is a peer education program headed up by one of my colleagues, Ramona Taylor. And that's a program that is throughout the state of Missouri, but it helps us and throughout the United States as well. But it helps a person to become and say, if I want to be involved in a program that's giving education to others or belong to a support group or help facilitate that I see myself as being an advocate like Justin, or I see myself as being a part of the solution and helping others.
Here on this next slide, which is personal strengths, understanding the illness. First is one of the most key things that a person who's just been diagnosed and also what the family members must also know. You can gain this type of information from the hospital, the therapist, or psychiatrist, maybe even your general practitioner doctor. He also can give you information with pamphlets and things of that nature, along with doing some personal research on WebMD and other websites like NAMI and Mental Health America and the National Institute of Mental Health. Another key thing is educational background, which is something that you can use as a foundation, which will lead us into where we're there now in personal strengths and assets, where you can find out a person's, like some people may have a GED, which is also as great as having a high school diploma. So that leaves a great, accomplishment that the person has already reached, and you can use that as far as a stepping stone in building up someone's confidence to show to them that they did this already. So let's take it to another step. Second thing, socializing with others can be used in many, many different ways, such as a person who's a very extrovert person, he or she will not be ashamed to go out and ask for the help. They also will build new relationships with people they go to school with, or maybe go to church or any other community involvement they may have. And none of this will even be remotely possible without a person following his or her treatment plan. Because if you're not Med compliant and if you don't have goals set, anything else that we are going to talk about today will not be able to be reached.
One of the things as Justin talked about is following up with following their treatment plan. It's important that that treatment plan be something that the individual feels a part of and accountable for. And one of the greatest ways of doing that is not only learning about the illness, but also feeling a part of their treatment plan, learning about what the symptoms are prior to becoming ill, or learning what the symptoms are so that they can educate family members. Following their treatment plan also means that in a crisis, in the event that they should become ill, that they are part of that plan. It might be something as simple as knowing which hospital or which medications they need to have in terms of written down, or just that family member and how to support them. But their crisis plan is basically to help them, or an aftercare plan of being a part. Many times when persons are released from the hospital or family members, or they return home, there's an absence of feeling a part of their plan, as though it's something that someone is giving them, and they don't feel any connection to it. But a great way is feeling a part of their treatment plan, and so that they can educate their family members and caregivers and loved ones on how they can help them support and help them along that continuum. I think it's also important to talk about the fact of socializing with others. Immediately, oftentimes when persons experience a diagnosis, there is a fear of what others may think. And sometimes within family members or within their own community, there's a reaction in terms of internally that I don't want to tell anyone what's going on with me. And that's that isolation, if you will, where they basically become isolated from the world. It's good for persons to become active and involved in not only an institutional setting or actively involved in a community, but to return back to those areas in which they socialize and become actively involved. Sometimes in just becoming actively involved and educating those around them that they are living with an illness can be one of the greatest breakers of stigma, because now it puts a face with someone that they know. And that you can see them having a successful life. So we want to encourage persons to begin to socialize in those avenues where they were at once before.
Now, we come to the thing on who is a person's support. Now, without these supports here, which are family members, friends, mental health professionals, doctors, and support groups, the personal goals or that person cannot seek recovery at all. Because without these teammates, as Brian specified earlier, nothing can be done. And first and foremost, we have to find out who is this person's true link. Who do they like to talk to the most? And these 5 people must be intertwined with each other. As we go on, you will see how the supports and the resources and the personal strengths all come into line, such as family members. Now, some people are more able to go talk with maybe their mother or their father, their sisters or their brothers, but also sometimes they may not have the support of the family. So who's next on the line, which is be friends. Me being a young person, I feel much more comfortable explaining things to my friends than I am to maybe my mom, because my mom comes from a place and time where they just keep a lot of things in. They don't look at things for what they are. They just sweep things up under the rug. Mental health professionals, those could be social worker, community support workers, or a nurse that you may be seeing, that a nurse practitioner. As you know, the doctor, he's another great asset to have, because he's always a listening ear for the person. Also, he's the one that prescribes you your medicine. If the doctor does not listen to you, first and foremost, it's going to be real hard for you to enjoy the support and to build a level of trust with him. Support groups are great. A great place for you to exhale some of the things that you may be going through, and also you may meet people that you that have gone through the similar things that you've gone through, and they can help you, guide you down the line, such as peer support group, and also as bridges.
One of the things I think in terms of supports in regards to all of these persons is realizing that who the person feels are their support. Have they named those persons? Have they identified those persons themselves? When we talk about family members, oftentimes there can be a challenge with family members. A family member can be in terms of, again, wanting to help that person in the very best way that they can and support that person. But at that time, that individual may not feel that they are the greatest support for them. So there are those challenges. There are those ebbs and flows, if you will, in terms of building relationships and trust along this road to recovery. Friends can also be a support as well. I think it's also important to not only look in terms of what's presented before you in terms of loved ones, but also what the person deems as a support. I was very fortunate to meet a person who talked about the fact that their faith community was one of the biggest supports in their road to recovery. And this person talked about the fact that their pastor was one of their biggest champions in terms of them seeking out treatment, staying in their treatment and their road to recovery. And any time that she experienced a challenge, that he was one of her biggest champions. I think that's vital in terms of, because oftentimes we don't think of the faith community being as a support. But if that person identifies that clergy member or that sister and brother in their church or parish nurse or parishioner that they go to church with, that is their support, and we should validate that. And also invite them in. There's oftentimes a question of confidentiality in terms of what we can release to family members. But if the individual is comfortable, and as long as they are comfortable with what is shared, in terms of how that person can be a support. Oftentimes we as mental health professionals will say, well, here are some resources, here are some books to read, and here are some avenues to take and to learn about it. But oftentimes it's separate from the individual being there as a support and saying what's most helpful for them. I think it's important, and I think Justin and I talked about some of his experience when family members or friends were visiting him in the hospital and helping him to navigate life. They were there at the beginning of his illness, they were there in the in-between times, and he credits them for helping him along that road to recovery. They learned themselves about what it is to deal with an illness from his perspective, to see life from his eyes, and they were able to support him. It also lessened what they thought about illness if they had never encountered it before. So I think it's in terms of inviting friends along the journey, inviting family members when the individual is most comfortable.
And if I may add one more thing, I'd like to have you all look at something real quickly. When a person goes to the hospital, they're like a battery that has no juice. And some of these people can be either a positive piece or they can be a negative piece. And if the person chooses to continue to listen to that negative half of maybe friends and family members, no matter what the doctor says or the mental health professional is telling them, the person will not energize. But when the roles are reversed, when they are listening to these 5 groups of people, a person can charge up, and his or her things of what they want to do are endless. Who are the resources available? I think it's key for everyone, no matter if you're dealing with a mental health challenge or you're just a person in society. We all must have mentors. I learned the other day that older gentlemen, such as much more mature gentlemen like Brian, is here. He could be a mentor for me for dealing in mental health, in the mental health community. Community mental health organizations, they are a great resource for people to find out more about their illnesses, and they also give opportunities for families to join groups and to understand also what their family members and loved ones are going through. Human and social service agencies. Whoa, some of us think that those places can be a little dreadful, but they're also a great place to find resources. They can help you with finding out financial aid for when a person wants to go to school, finding housing opportunities such as Section 8, or maybe low-income housing. Then you also have training programs. Training programs are great. They're able to help, as you all know, we're going through a quiet recession, so these training programs would be great. You can find out ways to retool yourself, because you come from a state where you don't think that you can do anything, so you have training opportunities to help reteach you anything that you may want to do, such as electrician, maybe you want to be administrative assistant. All these things are training programs out there to help assist the person in their community resources.
One of the things I think that's really key, as Justin talked about, is having a mentor. I think one of the greatest assets in life is when you can see someone who has, if you will, has had some of the similar experiences of life as you have had. And mentors are great. One of the things I like about working with Justin is we've had the opportunity to work in several different venues, is oftentimes he becomes the first African-American male that's actually stood up before a group of people and talked about mental health. It's one thing when Brian is standing up and speaking to professionals or speaking to a crowd in regards to mental health and or educating family members on mental health and awareness and breaking stigma. It's another thing completely when Justin and I present together and talk about what it is to be hospitalized, what it is to be on the road to recovery. And as a role model for both family members, they then see that family member as, I see my son or I see my spouse, my husband being successful. If Justin can do it, then he is my role model, and maybe I can link him with Justin or someone like Justin. Organizations like NAMI or organizations like the Independence Center have individuals who are on the road to recovery, but they're also individuals who become a supportive team for that individual and become mentors. when we start to talk about those training programs that are available to individuals, oftentimes, it's particularly in particular in our economic situation that we are right now, where it can be stressful. And we need mentors to help us redefine where our career goals are. Maybe if I change my life and change a part of my life in terms of career goals and my education or going back to school, I need a mentor. Well, that same type of mentor is needed with an individual who has had a mental health challenge. There's nothing greater in terms of a peer being able to say, I have experienced something similar, and as you can see, my life has changed. I went back to school. I was able to accomplish things like, one person I know, in terms, I wrote a book and had it published. Or I was able to complete my master's and then go on to other greater things. So those training programs that are available in terms of work programs, as well as mentoring programs that are available when a person returns back to school, those are great things. What we're talking about in regards to this person is well connected with resources. They have their counselor or coach in high school, teachers from their community, a mentor that they grew up with. They also have the relationships with their parents and other family members, significant others, and so on. But it's oftentimes a challenge, particularly for individuals, that we see ourselves as the champion, or what I call the soloist. And we want so desperately for this person to succeed that we're almost forgetting that this person is surrounded by a circle of support. They have their own individual strengths. They have their own personal resilience. They have, if they have been engaged in alcohol abuse or use, or narcotics use and abuse, then they have their sobriety to rely on. Prior to that illness, they had hope, they had dreams, they had aspirations. And through this road of recovery, our goal is to help them regain that hope for their life. They have their spiritual community, their faith community. This person is surrounded, and we have to remember to connect that person with all of those supports and remain connected with them and invite them along that person's journey.
If also, as Brian was just stated, everyone has to stay connected in one way or another. If you look at this, I call it the Chrysler sign. I hope I don't get in trouble for that. But I wish, at some point throughout each the person's day, he comes in contact, if not with everyone that's in this circle, and they all need to be on one link. The parents have to stay in contact with the doctors and the social workers and the other clinicians that the young man or woman comes in contact with, alongside with maybe with the neighbors. You just ask your neighbor sometime, you see how Stevie was doing the other day. Oh, he seemed okay. He sat outside and read a book. Everybody plays a key role in this. Without everyone playing their piece, recovery may not be possible for he or she. Also, you have to look under hope. Hope and resilience is what we all must do to make sure that this person continues to move on and strive to do better things. Because without hope and resilience, a person will stay isolated and just stay on a downward spiral, which we don't want to happen.
So let's start with giving you an example. Donald is a 27-year-old individual. He's managed living with bipolar illness for the past 3 years. And now his family members, as well as his counselor, are encouraging him to take some steps towards achieving a personal goal. He's got a career goal. He has his mind set on something that he's wanted to do for a while, and perhaps at the beginning of his illness, he thought that this was unachievable. But now that he's had some time up under his belt, he's engaged in terms of treatment, he is actively involved in his community. Now it's time to encourage him to take another step. He's completed some goals, and we're supporting him. So what initially would we do?
What are Donald's personal goals? First goal, I wish to be self-employed. That's a great step. So next, I'd like to go to a trade school, and that you can find out what Donald wants to be. Sit down with counselors and things of that nature. And third, and not least, I want to be a tow truck driver. That comes from finding out what the skills that Donald has. In my situation, these are some of the very much steps that are on my treatment plan. And it's all broken down in this type of way, which I think is great. Because first and foremost, you have to ask yourself, where did Donald want to become self-employed from? That came from his hope. That came from what he wanted to do prior to him having a mental illness, and all that came from the hope and resilience that everyone helped build back into Donald. Second, it also gave him enough courage to go to school, go check out trade schools with his friends or family members or even a mentor. Third, the family members, the clinicians all sat down with Donald to find out and look into everything that he wanted to become a tow truck driver, which is, I think, is a pretty good profession.
One of the things in terms of when you ask a person, so what are your goals? What would you like to accomplish? Oftentimes that might be a very daunting question. And the reason, if you notice, the questions basically focus on narrowing down to a specific goal that the person wants to achieve. It's okay to kind of dream and say, what would you like to become? What would you like to do? Where would you like to be in 5 years or 2 years? What do you see yourself becoming? And of course, we're talking about someone, and at this point in their treatment, a little bit further along than some. But again, starting with a broad scope, narrowing it down to something that is realistic and achievable for that person.
Here we see what are Donald's personal assets. These are the things that helps Donald succeed in his everyday life and also in his career. First, he is good with his hands. To be a tow truck driver, you got to pull those different levers to jack up those trucks. He's also good with math. You can't have a 1-ton truck lifting up a 2-ton F-350. He enjoys working on tasks by himself, meaning, not to say this that he's alone or anything like that, but he enjoys doing things that you can assign. That shows that he's a dependable employee if Donald was to come and work for you. He also has a supportive family, which is very much needed. And dealing with different mental illnesses, as you all may know, that we can go up and down sometimes. And with family and other supports, it helps give us a balance. He is also engaged in his treatment, meaning that he speaks up and is not afraid to say today he's not having a good day. Maybe he had a day where he missed his medicine. But he has to be open enough to tell that to his family members, his friends, and any clinicians that he has to see on a regular basis.
One of the biggest challenges, and oftentimes people experience, is their relationship with their doctors or with their counselors in regards to what's going on with them. The engagement in treatment and following along that continuum of care is being able to say, as Justin said, what they're experiencing, and to be an active part. That relationship is so key and keen in regards to how that person, their collegiality between the individual as well as their therapist or their doctor, and being able to say, these are what my needs are and these are what my goals are, and how can we achieve those together, and then also surrounding that person. These are some of the strengths and assets that Donald has, and we want to support that. One of the greatest things that we can do in regards to this is looking at down on all the things that he's accomplished. Let's say, for example, in those 3 years that he's tried several jobs, and some were successful, some not so successful. But a supportive family, as well as friends and loved one, sees where he has made efforts to change and where he's made efforts to build his life, and we support that. And when those challenges come, also recognizing that along the continuum of care, along their life, there are going to be those experiences where there are some failures, but it also becomes the catalyst for them to make other efforts.
Now, we also have, who are Donald's supports? His family members, his friends, community support workers, psychiatrists, his therapists, and also his AA sponsors. All these people come into play at some point during Donald's day at work, in his off time, and how they all come together is what you will see here and on the next slide, how they come together and help Donald to become the person that he is, he's on his way to become. His family members. His family members are there. It's his close connection. You can call your mom, like, Mom, these people they're making me quite upset today. Nobody can calm you down like a dear old mom. She might say, come on over and, I'll make you, I like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Mom makes you a nice peanut butter and jelly sandwich. She sits down and talks to you. Your friends, they may be able to talk to you during that time when you're heated at a customer, or someone else in the general public has made you upset, you like, let me call my friend, so I don't do anything. You have your community support worker who can help you navigate through different problems that you may be having. You may have problems with seeing that you need a new, I hope you don't, but a new therapist or a psychiatrist. And your psychiatrist is the one who can help you understand the balances of your medicines and things of that nature. Your therapist. Therapists, I've come to find out, are the best people to talk to. They have the best listening ear, and that's what you need a lot of times when you may not be able to talk to anyone else on this list. Your therapist is always there to help you in your everyday or scheduled times. An AA sponsor, they're pretty much like your mentor or someone that can help you understand what's going on with you in your daily life. We all need that, to have someone who has walked through our shoes.
One of the things that's important for us to realize in regards to Donald is these are the persons that he identified as his supports. These were not the ones that his therapist said, well, I think your support should be. But these are persons that he identified. In terms of a family member, it might be the spouse, it might be his wife or a significant other, his girlfriend, saying that I think that you can take this next step. Friends, and maybe in terms of it's the friends that he has chosen to be in his corner. Maybe separating himself in terms of those who, in terms of said negative things about him, and realizing which friends are truly supports for him. And even when it becomes a challenge, oftentimes we have those persons in our lives who are what we deem as a support, and others might not see them as being helpful. It's important to realize that in this person, there are a number, just like life itself, there are a number of people who influence us. But Donald has identified those persons which are going to be a support for him in his goal of becoming a towing driver, a tow truck driver. And these are the persons who can also assist him. As Justin is going to go to the next slide, each one of those persons is going to help him reach those resources. Each one of those persons is going to be a valuable support. Again, it might be the family member who introduces him to the person who's going to help him obtain his driver's license, or his CDL, his commercial driver's license. It may be his community support worker who talks about the various schools that are available to him in his area. It might be his AA sponsor who is always there in terms of when he's experiencing a challenge and it's been a rough day at school or in the program, or maybe he was denied access and saying, before you change, let's go to a meeting. But these are the persons who are also going to identify other resources. One of the things that I've noticed over my career is that a lot of times in most social workers, we have them on our desk, is that what we call our Bible. And those are all the resources that we think can help that individual we're working with. But my greatest resource has always been the individuals who are supporting that person, who go, have you thought about, or have you considered, or these might be something, or I know someone who can assist him here or her here. It's always been that person who says, I'm connected with someone on this campus or in this organization who could possibly provide access to learning about other resources, finances, training programs. It's never been what I considered my work Bible. It's always been those persons who also were willing to assist that person in realizing that resources. One young person that I had the privilege of working with named his former school teacher, who he had not seen for a while in middle school, was a resource for him. Contacting that school teacher and saying just basically that this person was going through a challenge but wanted to go back to school, and started to talk about other programs that were available that, even though I had worked in education for many years, I had not known about the financial resources that were available to him as a mental health consumer. There were things that were available in terms of scholarships and programs that were available to him. And just as that person began to be a catalyst, that person also began to be an encourager to him, talking about how they always believed in him, that he would accomplish great things. That was just enough get up for him to try that much harder to make that person proud of him in a way. in terms of that. So we have to look at those resources, those family members, as being not only supports, but pointing to the resources. So in the last few minutes, and we've probably given you the very quick, if you will, way to road to success. But all of us know that when someone is dealing with a mental health challenge or illness, that there are going to be challenges as well as opportunities for success. So where do we begin? One of the basic ways that we can begin to support someone as well as the individual with themselves is becoming knowledgeable about the illness, becoming knowledgeable about what the diagnosis is, how to follow a treatment plan. There are a number of different organizations, including Mental Health America, and I have a couple of resources from Mental Health America as well as the National Institute for Mental Health. They are available not only for consumers but for family members in terms of finding out, what do I do now that I have received the diagnosis? What does the diagnosis mean? A guide in terms of like bipolar disorder in children and teens, a parent's guide. How can I be the best support for my child? There are a number of different organizations. We'll speak a little bit about that in a few minutes. That can be a help in terms of learning more. Start with realistic, achievable goals. We want to find out what is the best way that we can help this person. One of the best ways is actually learning to listen. Where is this person? One of the most devastating things that I think that has happened to persons who I've worked with is that when goals were set, but they were not participant in them, and they were either too lofty or they were not, the bar was not set high enough for them to achieve. And therefore there was a disconnect. So we want to start with where the person is and where they feel is an achievable goal. And also for family members as well as consumers. One of the things that Justin talked about is a support group. I know that for many years, Justin has been a very active part of the Independence Center and other programs in Missouri. I think also it's important for family members to join a support group, join a group that not only helps them to be caregivers and as well as supports, but also setting clear boundaries for themselves by learning from others what have been the challenges. Again, just as we talked about the isolation for the consumer, there's also the isolation that family members feel that they are all alone in the care of their loved one. When to step in. It's a key part. When the person is ready. Initially, in terms of the diagnosis, oftentimes, again, looking back, what can I do? Asking the clinician in terms of support. Again, that confidentiality is a big piece in regards to what we can tell and what we can disclose to family members, but also disclosing to the family members how they can be of assistance. Oftentimes, family members really want to be of support, but they simply don't have the tools or the knowledge of what ways to help rebuild their family, reconnect, what things to be protective of for themselves, to be careful of what of various traps, and also how to navigate the system. How can we work as a team to support this individual? When to step back, key place. One of the things I think in terms of that has been oftentimes is when family members are not aware, or caregivers and loved ones are not aware of when they have become too involved, or it's their support has come enabling, or they have become so far removed that they're not a support at all. One of the things I think in terms of a person is that life happens. And one of the best teachers about life is when that person experiences life as a challenge and yet knows that that supportive team will be there to support them, but allows them to have that challenge of rebuilding in those steps again. A young man that, in terms of who I know experienced not continuing in his treatment, experienced a setback. Family members wanted to rush in and be that safety net for him. But through working through that, they realized, let's allow him to experience some challenges and yet be there as a support. As he began to experience, if you will, his own bumps, he also became a protector of his own mental health and became one of the biggest advocates for himself in terms of speaking up and speaking out of how family members could support him and family members being there. All of us know those challenges are going to come as we support our loved ones. How to motivate. I think just like one of the things, and I tell Justin this all the time, I'm proud of him as an example for us as a community, and I'm proud of him as a colleague and as a friend. But I think the other part of that is for family members is that when we tell our loved ones, I'm proud of you. Today, I saw that you really tried. You made it through your session, and it seemed to be hard. The fact that you're opening up, and I want you to know I'm proud of you. You've been through so much, and just the fact that you are facing it, I'm proud of you, and how can I help you? Motivating them when you see them make those changes. They might not be where we want them to be. Now, their dialogue I just did might sound a little bit commercial and easy to say. But the fact of the matter is, oftentimes we don't help people understand how to motivate their loved one. Sometimes it becomes off as preaching. Sometimes it comes off as a number of different things. But I think it's important for us as we have that dialogue with their support, figuring out the best ways. And then what can we expect along this road and this journey? We can expect those challenges. One of the best ways to talk about to someone is that not everything is going to come as easy. Not everything is going to flow the way we did it in the last half hour or so, that it comes that quick. But expecting those challenges, expecting to have challenges in regards to medication or experiencing symptoms, but being aware of or looking for side effects, or being able to say to your doctor, okay, I may need to change. That's a conversation that we can begin to have with that person and helping them support. And then those opportunities. When we have those setbacks, rather than looking at it as an opportunity for failure, it's also an opportunity to step forward. But when we anticipate those and we plan for those and plan for ourselves, again, as family members, join those support groups. I want to go to some of the resources. I'm sorry.
If I may interject real quick here before we go to the next slide, I'm like to give you all a good analogy. You know, as a lot of you all may have children, or you all may remember your childhood with training wheels on a bike. You know, this is similar to that, teaching your kid how to ride a bike. When it's, you know, you start us off with these training wheels, you know, Mom, Dad, take me off these wheels. You know, even as a parent, you could be concerned about your child, you know, scaving up his knee or hurting him or herself. But you have to let the person guide themselves into what they want to do. You know, let me take off those training wheels so I can brush my knees up and all those good things and come back to let you do your parently thing. But at the same time, by me falling and you all helping us back up, get back up on the bike and to ride on down the road of recovery, that's something that's very much needed.
And there are a number of different organizations, and because this training is being broadcast throughout several states, we wanted to make sure that we didn't just talk about Missouri. The National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, or NAMI, is an organization, a national organization, but also can talk about chapters that are available for you. NAMI has programs not only for consumers but family members. As an individual who has worked with family members, and even in my own personal family, have experienced those challenges dealing with mental illness, the best way that I could be a support was finding out the education and finding other supports. NAMI has a number of different programs that help individuals who have loved ones how to appropriately care, how to set realistic boundaries for themselves, how to be aware of what symptoms to look for, and also educate them on the various disorders. That way, life is not as scary or as cumbersome on this road to recovery. It's not only for the individual who is experiencing that challenge, but also for consumers. The International Center for Clubhouse Development, and you have the website that's available to you. There are clubhouses all over throughout the United States, 3 here in Missouri, but Clubhouse and the Clubhouse model offers a variety of supports, helping individuals to become engaged in work programs, helping the individuals to engage in terms of learning about their illness, from a relationship where we see one another as peers and helpers along this continuum. Justin is a part of that national model and also does some of the training and planning for the development for those clubhouses. I think it's important for individuals to learn about that as well. The Missouri Coalition for Community Mental Health Centers, their website is available to you. As Justin said earlier, oftentimes there are pamphlets and brochures that are available for consumers as well as family members, available through this organization when you go to that center. If you want to learn about what center is available to you, you can simply go to their website and determine which site is available to you.
We've got questions whenever you're ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right. All right, so let's start in, if someone does not have the support around them in their environment, if they're in a city where they don't have a social circle, they don't have a job, and they don't connect to a religious group.
If I'm sorry, the first part of what you
So
said.
what if someone does not have the support around them in their environment?
I think one of the things in terms of working with, in terms of if there's not a support around them, find out from their mental health provider or the community mental health center about building a support. There are many organizations in terms of helping persons to reconnect. As Justin said, many individuals, for example, an individual who may has experienced homelessness or has experienced, they're in a city where they have not been before, and again, there are not those supports. Becoming involved in programs such as the St. Patrick's Center, which has a variety, in St. Louis, which has a variety of services, has a variety of social groups, helps that person to reconnect. Programs such as NAMI might be another organization in terms of helping that person build those supports, and also will link them to other supportive program and resources to help them to regain. It's not uncommon for the person to, for an individual to experience in that isolation. And oftentimes it's because they're not aware of what's available to them. But if they can start simply by re-engaging in the community and finding out what's available to me. Tom, when that person asks that question, the first thing that comes to my mind in my travels and has been the rural communities of Missouri.
That's the next question.
Next question.
Oh.
And many times there are programs there. Mental Health America is in the process of beginning Bridges programs in communities such as I'm thinking of the Ozark Center in Joplin, which unfortunately due to tornadoes, but we were beginning a program there, or looking at Sedalia, or looking at those communities. But oftentimes building supports, VAs, the Veterans Administration hospitals are oftentimes good supports. When you start to look in terms of what's available, if you're not available to go online, call MHA, and our 1-800 number is there if you're outside, and we can tell you what's available to you and also helping you as a resource. Each one of those programs that I named can begin to tell you about NAMI in particular, or Mental Health America, can tell you about resources that are available, calling those organizations and saying, hey, I'm in mid-Missouri and I'm not sure what's available. My loved one or I myself don't have those supports. What's available to me? Another organization to call, and oftentimes not thought about, is the crisis line, the National Suicide Prevention Line. Those programs have resources available. That number is 1-800-273-TALK. The reason why I mentioned that program as being a resource is oftentimes we get calls from those areas not related to suicide, but also what supports are available in those communities, and just simply reaching out and finding out what's available. I know the difficulty in terms of, because I've traveled to those communities, that it may be so many miles, whereas I live in an urban area, it's not that far. But you would be surprised how many programs are available in that area, or even in terms of mental health services that are available to them.
They work with transportation issues as well?
There are many organizations that do. Some organizations simply don't have the dollars, and as we've received so many cuts, not only in Missouri but nationally in regards to mental health, there are those challenges. But let's not forget, there are some programs that are now beginning for distance learning or distance relationships, where persons can, or in terms of just as people are participating now, are being able to engage in programs as well as, so that's another vehicle. But again, talking to those programs of what's available as well.
I say use your cell phone. If you don't have internet access, use your cell phone. Use Twitter and Facebook as possible search engines to help you find resources that are in your city. For the much younger, I don't know what this age demographic is, but use those two outlets.
What if family members are all users?
That can be a challenge. And oftentimes in terms of when, I can speak from this point, from the clinical side, trying to find what supports are there. Oftentimes there are toxic relationships that the person or the individual is experiencing. What we want to do is realize that this person is not isolated once they leave our office or our center or our care, that they have a number of different challenges to face. As we are oftentimes a resource for that individual, we are also a resource for those family members or those friends or those caregivers who are also in flux. And we want to inundate those persons with that information as well. Now, I'm going to talk out of both sides of my neck, if you will. When that person is also experiencing that challenge, or when in terms of loved ones that are surrounding them, we have to realize that they're going to interact with them. We also want to have that person to name what are those supports, what are the things that you need to become successful in life, and helping them to identify what those persons are there. So we have to recognize that there are going to be those obstacles and those challenges in dealing with this, and when I say this, I'm talking about dealing with their road to recovery. But it has to be the individual who just starts to determine and select those persons who can help them become more successful. Is it always as easy as what I just said? Of course not. It's going to be a challenge, but we have to provide with them and also identify other resources or supports along the continuum.
All right. How does someone get their family members to be there to support? And what if the family members only put them down?
Well, I would have to say that you may have to do a bit of convincing. Because a lot of people don't have the education which comes along that builds the stigma up. Like for myself, I come from a family who, they understand a lot of things, but mental health is not one of them. So I had to educate them and tell them like the things that I was going through, to show them that I'm not my illness, and you just have to show and keep your family members updated with what you're going on. You have like friends who may be close to your family that can help talk to your family members for you, or maybe invite your family members to come talk at one of your clinicians type appointments or something like that to help build them up. And for the piece where they build you down, it's sad to say that all family members or the whole family may not be good for you. So you have to look at other resources that you may have available, such as friends, schoolmates, clergymen, or whomever else you may have relationships with. That's something I had to know, because me personally, I have a lot of family members that tell me, there's nothing wrong with you, and I tell them, you're right, there's nothing wrong with me, but I do need to take this medicine to keep me balanced so I can go out and continue to live a productive life. So I hope that helped you.
I think in addition to that, one of the things in terms of what Justin said is inviting someone to learn about their illness, and inviting them to a session, inviting them to learn about it, encouraging them. The conversation that we're having right now is the conversation that I've learned to have with my family members. I don't know anyone who I work with, or anyone in terms of colleagues or peers, or anyone in general who's never had to deal with a mental health issue in their family. That 1 in 5 includes everybody who's watching and all of us who work in any area of life. So it's important for us that when we hear those negative thoughts, and when we hear those negative comments come across the table of, well, that's that stereotype of that person, or the stereotype of this particular illness, we have to begin to eradicate that stigma and begin to talk about it in a healthy way, and begin to educate our family members. Family members, again, this road to recovery, particularly for consumers and family members, is about education. I can't say enough about calling MHA and finding out resources, or about educating on what an illness is, what those symptoms are, how to begin after recovery. That's a slow process, and it will be a slow journey, in all honesty, to educate family members of how they can be supportive. We made this presentation to sound very quick and easy, But the truth of the matter is Justin and I talk all the time of how we learn to support one another, and how I listen to him about challenges that he's experienced, and I'm better able to help those family members that I come in contact with, and how they can support their loved ones as well. It's about telling your story and about building a community of support. That's why I believe family members should be engaged in group support for them, and I also think consumers should be engaged in support groups, and then us as a whole being together as a community to support one another.
One last thing. I have to say that we have to speak up for ourselves. Even when you have people putting you down, you still have to strive and show them that what I'm doing here is helping not just me, but helping everyone. And also, ask them, when has the last time they looked at TV? Today I seen a TV commercial for Seroquel, and all they said was for depression, mood stabilizer. You know, if it can't be too bad what we have going on if it's on TV. Things that are bad outside of Maury and Jerry Springer, they don't show bad things on TV.
Do you find yourselves having to deal with people who don't even believe in the very existence of the mental illness?
Ooh.
From the standpoint, and I'm
Parents, yes.
Parents, we have. I have had the experience, the experience of working with family members who, like Justin said, they didn't believe that their loved one, the diagnosis or the illness was a real illness for them, or they could overcome it. I've also had the challenge of being in the faith community, myself being involved in the faith community, to hear thoughts of, well, all they need to do is pray. All they need to do is, and we could pray it away and or cast this spirit out, and maybe there could be a change. And then there's just some that in terms of not believing in terms of a spirit or anything else, in terms of not understanding the illness. I liked it to talk about it in terms of if someone was experiencing diabetes. We would learn everything. If that was in our bodies, we would learn how to regulate our diet. We would learn how to regulate our exercise. We would learn what things we need to do to take care of ourselves. And then we would educate persons and say, well, no, I can't eat the sweets today because of my diabetes. The shame and the stigma of diabetes has become where there are magazines, and oftentimes we hear that conversation. You now can go to almost any restaurant and order food that allows you to adjust your diet. In the same way, 20 years ago, conversations about mental health, conversations about bipolar illness, conversations about depression, conversations about various disorders were not as prevalent. So we're slowly turning where we're turning a curve, or we're turning a page, if you will. It's important for us to continue that conversation by, as Justin said, speaking up, and also not being ashamed. And for those of us who are family members, to find those supports as well as to educate one another.
All right. Well, as they say, to be continued, right? Actually, the last question that I had in there was somebody that wanted to know if you two were available to go on the road and talk to people. It was actually local here, but if you were, can we put people in touch with you if they're interested in having you guys come and chat with them?
If you're interested in contacting either of us, please call us at Mental Health America of Eastern Missouri. The number is 314-773-1399, or you can visit us on our website, www.mha-em.org, or our 1-800 number, 1-800-359-5695, toll free.
And don't be at all surprised if that shows up in an email to you later on here, along with the evaluation link.
If I could end this on a great note to show, to tell you all, none of this, what I have become, would not be possible without people like Brian and also Thomas here, and all the other people I've encountered on my road to recovery. You all play a very big factor into how consumers' outcome is. You all are a very big part of that. And just on my behalf and others, I'd like to say thank you all, and please join us again.
And I'd like to thank you, Justin. Thank you, Brian, because of what you do makes us grow in what we do as well, and so that's very important and helps an awful lot of people. Folks, these same two will be back with us on July 20th for a program that's actually a continuation of one that I wish we had an archive tape of, but we had technical difficulties and couldn't record it. But it's another program dealing with mental health stigma, and I think that that's going to be a really, really interesting program. It's off of Justin's design. We are more than you think. In between now and then, on July 12th, Khalil Osiris is going to be with us, and he's going to be talking about the a mentoring program. That's a program that's out of Louisiana, out of New Orleans Recovery School District. It's been researched by, I believe it's by Tulane, but we can take a look at that. We'll have that up on our website shortly and send you out notice about that. In the meantime, anybody's interested in CEUs, that link's still available. We'll also send you out an evaluation. We'd love to have your comments back, feedback on this program and the other things that we do. Join our mailing list, and I think we've shot past our hour, so I'm going to say goodbye to you folks out there, and to Brian, to Justin, thank you very much.
Thank you.